presented by Freedom Road, which is a consulting group dedicated to shrinking the narrative gap. And one of the ways we do that is by holding a global writers group every Saturday. We literally don't miss a Saturday. There's one Saturday in the year that we always take off, and that's the Saturday between Christmas and New Year's. But every other Saturday, somebody is in the writing room. And thank you so much for joining us. So let me tell you a little bit about the writers group, and then I'm going to bring on Anna Elisabeth Howard, who is really one of our facilitators for the group, and she is going to be our moderator for tonight. So the Global Writers Group began in 2020. We had just done a 7-week Writing for Social Justice webinar series, which was off the hook and is still available, by the way. If you go to freedomroad.us to the Institute, you'll actually find it if you scroll down to the bottom of your page. But we did that, and we were realizing, you know what? We have this group of people who went through this. We have writers now, and we need some writing time. We need like dedicated time to do some writing, and we're all cloistered. Let's start a writers group online. And it was incredible. We had 4 people who were facilitating at the time. That included Shantae Griffin, who just had a book come out last year, Andre Henry, whose book came out a couple of years ago, Marlena Graves, who's also actually published a couple of books since then, and one of them in our group, actually both Andre and Shantae and also Marlena all published their books out of this writers group. And we gained this incredible community that has been coming together every Saturday and sharing our stories with each other. It is rich, and I think that you're going to get a taste of that tonight. One of the reasons we do this writers group is because, when we write, we're not just writing for ourselves, we're writing for our work to be read. We're writing for our work to be heard. We're writing for our work to be taken in and to hopefully write a better world, which is one of our mottos. That's what we come together to do, is to write a better world. Well, what that requires is that our work gets published. So we have invited publishers and agents to come tonight to listen in and see if there are any writers that they might be interested in contacting. If you are, we invite you to contact me at Lisa at freedomroad.us and inquire about a particular writer. I would be very happy to connect you. So without further ado, everyone who is clicking in, again, please turn off your video and also mute yourselves so that the only people we can see on the screen are the writers who are going to be reading tonight. And I want to bring on now Anna Elisabeth Howard.
Hey everyone, I'm Anna and I will be moderating us this evening. I would like to introduce our very first writer. Our very first writer is Deborah Masten. Deborah is the Director of Global Personnel with Serve Globally. She's a licensed therapist. She lived in Cambodia for 14 years and has 3 adult children. She is captivated by the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. Deborah is also a huge fan of Lenny Kravitz, and she will be reading a piece called We Are Resilient. Deborah?
Perfect. What it means to navigate the world as a Black woman in 2025 is to daily battle who the world says we are, be up against the notion of limits, how much we can say, how much we can know, how much we're allowed to achieve, how much authority we can have, how worthy we are of love, how tolerant we should be of hate. It means to often call upon the dignity of our inner respect. When we encounter the soul-bruising, invisible game that the world loves to play, routinely denied the full acknowledgement of our humanity. This treatment was on full display in the movie The 6888. It tells the story of the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, the only Black U.S. Women's Army Corps unit sent to Europe during World War II. Despite the rampant racism, sexism, and inhumane working conditions, they work 7 days a week around the clock, sorting, processing, and delivering backlog mails to troops fighting in Europe. Under the leadership of Major Charity Adams, the unit not only handled mail for 4 million military and civilian personnel, it also impacted the crushed spirit and morale of the soldiers and their families, providing joy, hope, and peace of mind. All this while having their presence vilified, their operation sabotage. Sure, this story is incredibly noble and inspiring. It came at a great cost to Black women once again. Sometimes it makes me resent resilience. Stoic Black faces wiping off the spirit of indifference, looking at dignity afforded to everyone else, taking the high road, fighting for the long game, following their pride, representing their community and their ancestors, led by their character and the convictions of their faith to endure whatever is presented. No other choice remains. Selflessness of these incredible women was so undeserved by a world that felt entitled to their genius, grit, long suffering, and their care. They were admired for feeding the souls of those who delighted in tearing theirs apart. Those who see Black strength as their asset. Our resilience co-opted as their birthright. They make themselves undeserving beneficiaries of our resilience, capitalizing on our unflinching respect. From World War II to today's news story, there is no better example of one's humanity being aggressively dismissed than the recent encounter that Vice President Kamala Harris had with the husband, Congresswoman, being sworn into office. After being slow to follow and acknowledge her directions on where to stand, he concluded the no eye contact interaction by refusing to shake her hand. The cameras rolled. His eyes did not. They were robotic-like, dulled by the lifelessness that racism produces, unable and unwilling to afford common courtesy and decency to someone whose very presence was viscerally offensive to him. VP Harris returned her extended hand next to her own body, thwarting yet another humanity assassination attempt. She embodied enough dignity and strength to handle the ugliness of this moment. The invisible making wand his unextended hand attempted to wave was countered by her actual Black girl magic. Let's keep it moving power that shields her daily from those who bristle the audacity of her position and authority. Slight smile that expresses fatigue at yet another toxic interaction rather than joy. Her unshaken hand is lovingly gripped by her own inner respect. An inner respect fueled by a tenacity that resides in our very DNA. Generational strength, wisdom, joy, and badassness to carry us through anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Our ancestors endured heinous brutalities on a horrific scale, unparalleled by even the most scary or vile cinematic portrayals of terror. So when we look in a mirror, it's not what the world sees. A world of icy scrutiny, the unmistakable glaring glance we endure, slow downward gaze from our head to our toes, armed with enough indignation for one to question their right to have left their home, full body scanning our right to exist in spaces so proximate to theirs, without any additional acknowledgement. The glare cuts away before our humanity can be acknowledged, established. It cuts away with the intent of leaving a slice of our dignity bloodied and bruised. It becomes the equivalent of modern day branding. There's an attempt to take our peace of mind captive when our actual bodies are no longer an option. Those looks don't matter. Our ancestors took care of this kind of moment when we left the house today. We look in the mirror, surrounded by the reality that we are here, the offspring of a noble, invincible, and wise people, people who logically should never have survived, and yet not only survived, but produced some of the world's examples of the most beautiful, strong, creative, innovative, relentlessly hopeful human beings on the planet. That's the image that we scan from head to toe, looking deeply into our eyes and seeing our ancestors' strength looking back at us as if to say, we are who you are. Resilience is strength, defined by a relentless journey with the goodness of God, the ongoing renewal of our hope passport, never allowing us to see the visa to our joy expired. We are seen, fully scanned, carefully and wonderfully made, reminded to hold our head up, look straight ahead into God's watchful eyes filled with love and with the tears for our pain, healing for our bruised spirit, grace for our soul, power for our dreams, allowing us to walk out of our doors, knowing the faithfulness of God's traveling mercies, navigating the world as a Black woman, possessing a resilience that knows how to survive and how to get things done. Also, a resiliency demands that we also rest, take care of ourselves by sitting our Black asses down. Shoulders back, chins lifted up, resilience closest companions, love, compassion, and justice, we regain our footing. Our soul's compass is acknowledged. Our spirit agrees. There's never a question. There never needs to be a question of our humanity or bandage or search for our dignity. It was never lost. It was never in danger. We let the words of the artist's propaganda, the words reverberate. How am I supposed to chase who I already am? Resilience is not something we muster up. We are resilient.
Amen, amen, amen. That is Deborah Masten, everyone. I want to actually point you to the chat. In the chat, you probably saw a bunch of folks who are kind of repeating words and phrases that they liked, or like that's how we give feedback. One of the ways we give feedback every Saturday. So hey, I want to encourage everybody in the Zoom in the room to, when you hear something that resonates with you, go ahead and let us know that in the chat. Your feedback actually does matter. And the writers are looking at the chat in order to see if there's creative or constructive feedback, or if if something really hits, they need to know that. So thank you for that. And thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Anna.
Yeah, in addition to that, if you think of some place where this piece could land, or any of our pieces as we read this could land, a publication, where you would like to see it edited or published, just put that in the chat as well. We'd love to hear your ideas of where you think our pieces should go. So next up, we have Julia. Julia Devoney Weaver is a Jesus lover, writer, amateur social activist, and single mom of a beautifully brave daughter. She writes out of her experience with hopes of helping others feel safe enough to share their own stories. She'll be reading a story tonight called I Stopped Because It Hurt. And we did want to add for this one a content warning. It does mention self-harm. So if that is something that you don't need to hear in your life right now, her piece is a little bit over 5 minutes, and you could just turn your sound off for that. But if not, I encourage you, I love the ending where she goes in this piece, and I encourage you to stick with it if that's something you can do right now. Julia, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. I stopped because it hurt. For 45 years, the tiny half-inch scar on my wrist has been a symbol of weakness and failure. The horizontal slant and the fact that I was breathing were proof that I have been unsuccessfully suicidal. Unlike a woman I saw interviewed on a daytime talk show years after my foundering attempt, I had stopped slicing. The woman being interviewed was a suicide survivor. Her 6-inch purple scar with stitch marks etched along the sides ran vertically. She sliced up from the edge of her palm toward her elbow to open as much of the vein as possible. That was real. That was brave. That was not me. Today, my little scar caught my eye. While filing my nails, the sun's late afternoon angle made it glossy on my pale skin. Memories came back sharp like the sun. I am 15, sitting on the upstairs bathroom of my dad and stepmother's apartment. I have a pink double-bladed disposable razor in my hand. It is brand new, taken from under the sink next to the tampons I have finally learned to use. I carefully break the slender blades out from their plastic enclosure using a butter knife. I take one almost impossible to hold blade, tilt the corner down, and pull it across my wrist. I cut only a half-inch and I stop. I stopped because it hurt. The times I've looked back at that moment, I despise the girl on the bathroom floor, a teenage poet who wrote love sonnets to death but stopped before succeeding. Compared to my shelter home, ward of the state life, what the hell was a little pain? A little pain and the blood would have faded out of sight as I faded into my last day. But I failed. I was weak, a pitiful, tragic nobody, until today. Today, I remembered more of the afternoon I had ditched school to die, how I sat on the tan linoleum floor examining the veins beneath the skin where my scar lies now. The veins, like small streams, flowed to and from my hand into a thicker river at my wrist that soon split again to continue up my arm. I remember my confusion staring at my wrist. I had a blade, but realized I had no idea how to effectively cut my wrists. I'd never heard anyone describe it. There were no how-to books back then. I didn't know how to get the most blood out. So, using my 15-year-old logic, I followed the stream-like veins flowing into the river-type vein. All the blood I could see ran through that spot. So that was where I cut. And yes, I stopped. Of course I stopped when there was pain. The whole point was to get away from the damn pain. A decade after my bathroom attempt, I was sitting at a bar with another barfly. She had just come from the funeral of a family friend. A son in his 20s had shot himself in the head. She heard from the coroner that he reported that the young man had died with his face intact. He died immediately with an odd expression that to the coroner looked like he had changed his mind. I had no idea what that expression would be, but it didn't matter. I heard what she said and for a moment stopped breathing. Just a moment, then ordered a double shot of tequila. I stayed drunk for many years. Most days were a battle to want to stay alive, but I never tried to kill myself with any kind of blade. When I did try again, my method was slow. I wanted to have time to change my mind. My last attempt was 32 years ago. Addicted to everything, I decided to drink and snort cocaine until my heart stopped. No food, just my drugs of choice. I lasted for almost a week until I ran out of cocaine. I made one call to my dealer. He came to my house with an 8-ball, 1 ounce of the good stuff, which we shared, and then he coaxed me to the bar for more drinks. Already gone out of my mind, I went. I felt the sun on my skin walking from the parking lot inside and recognized the bartender. She persuaded me to try a cup of clam chowder mixed with a biscuit. I didn't throw up, and after a few more shots, my dealer drove me home where I slept in the same clothes for 2 days. Later that summer, I decided I was done drinking and drugging. The booze didn't get me drunk enough. The drugs didn't take me far enough. I made an appointment at a rehab and got clean and sober. As the sun fades, I turn my desk lamp on to view a mark I no longer see as a badge of dishonor. No, I don't have a 6-inch purple scar to declare my sincerity or courage, but I don't have to hide my half-inch scar in shame. I know I was brave and that the pain before the razor was as real as the razor pain on my skin, unbearable no matter what I did. So I stopped. I stopped trying to find ways to die. I stopped drinking and drugging. I stopped. I lived. I am here.
Wow. Amen. I want to actually, Julia, first of all, say thank you for your vulnerability in sharing that story. And I want to ask you a couple of questions so that folks will have a sense of where you see this landing. As I recall, this is a piece that's written for as a part of your memoir. Is that right?
It could be, yes. I haven't figured out where exactly it would go, but yeah.
Oh, I think this is definitely a piece for your memoir. I mean, if nothing else, it could also be a piece that introduces people to you and then, and then your book comes out, that kind of a thing. But I wonder, can you share with folks, because we know a little bit of your journey. Can you share with folks how you came into the writers group and your process of opening up and actually being able to write that piece?
Well, a friend told me about you guys, and I was I was very afraid. And
Mm.
I think the first thing I read was something I edited that I had already written before, but I edited during our writing time because I was afraid to really share what was happening with me at the time.
Mhm.
I think I've been coming for over a year and a half now, and through time I've gotten to where I trust people,
Mhm.
and I've shared a little bit more of myself and a little bit more of myself as time has
Mhm.
gone on, and it's a safe space. I think Deborah talks about it being a sacred space,
Mhm.
and it really is. And not only have I been able to write things that hopefully will help other people, but I've also been able to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been a privilege to walk on that road with you through your healing over the last year and a half. And um, I can't wait. I cannot wait for more people to read your story. I believe that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to experience healing because of the road you've walked. So thank you for that. I also want to bring back on Deborah. Deborah, you with us still? Yes.
Yes,
Deborah's been with us since the very beginning. I think
right.
the
Indeed.
very first uh, Global Writers Group circle. And Deborah, this piece that you read today, where do you see it landing?
We talked about this. It's great in the writers group. We mentioned Essence magazine. So I think it
Hmm.
is very sort of reader specific, although I think it can generalize to just anyone who's resilient and to be,
Hmm.
impressed by that. But a publication like that would be amazing.
Hmm.
Even, I think there are sections of other magazines that have a Black lens. So Huffington Post, Black Voices. It probably doesn't
Yeah.
know the name of the group, but you know what I mean.
Hmm.
But those kind of places where I think, especially in this year, especially in light of the examples that I gave,
Yeah.
there's a bruising, there's a need to be reminded of our need to rest. This resilience thing is here. But yeah, so any place where someone could be energized by that,
Hmm.
energized to sit themselves down, energized to, recognize who they already are. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, I also want to lift up the griot for you to consider. So
Wonderful.
that's a whole
Thank you.
nother possibility.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you, Lisa. You always do it, Lisa. I love how you're so generosity of spirit. It's like, okay, agree how it is. Thank you. I'll be reaching out to you.
Well, I mean, it's really a great piece,
Thank you.
and its focus on Black resilience in particular is
Yes.
really powerful at a moment like today, right, where we're watching the Hegseth uh, hearing on Capitol Hill and realizing what we're about to walk into. So thank you for that,
Thank you, Lisa.
Anna. Who's next?
All right. So next up, we have Chris Burton. Chris is a minister, teacher, writer, and professional speaker who works to bring together people who may be surprised by what they have in common. You can read his work at baddestchaplain.substack.com. Tonight, Chris will be reading a poem from his recently released collection, Be Attentive to What They Take From You. Tonight's poem is called I've Always Done My Best Work Out of Spite. Take it away, Chris.
Mm.
I've always done my best work out of spite. 4 years old, Bed-Stuy. Preschool teacher, as I recall, wouldn't let me use the bathroom, so her desk is where I found relief.
Oh,
6 years old, still Bed-Stuy. Said, perfecto! When teacher wanted a choir of voices to chant, practice makes perfect. But practice doesn't make perfect, it makes experience. She didn't know mockery was a love language. 10 years old, still Bed-Stuy, passing through prep tests. Final hurdle, never crossed, I never get in. Suspect it's my teacher, who loathed smart kids. Aunt failed to understand why I watched her bored, but I thought we were supposed to love our enemies. 11 now, in Brooklyn Heights, asked questions like, was I in Beverly Hills Polo Club? Coolly replied that it was just a t-shirt. Librarian asked, where I'm from. I reply, Bedford-Stuyvesant. Innately knowing I needed to pretty it up. Innately knowing that no variation would be enough for her not to flinch. Age 12, former valedictorian. In private schools answer to special ed. Teacher tells me she's from South Africa, but I'm not impressed. Were you happy or sad when Mandela got out? I make it to ninth grade. 13 now, in physics class. Frustrated white boy complains about affinity groups. How many do they need, he wails. Teacher, formerly cool, shushes me as if to say, not while he's here. Age 14, I'm coronated, king of the blacks. Age 15, I'm scaring my math teacher by asking why I got a C when my grades were all A's. You just seem like a C student, but I'm not satisfied. 16, ready to graduate, but not without a parting gift from teacher who writes, I hope you find a semblance of a work ethic in college. I wonder how many notes he wrote. 20 years old, when professor cries and leaves the class. Same age when classmate tells my line brother and I that she was counting on us in that discussion on race. 23, when I talked to the headmaster about the boy they want expelled, echoing parable of lost sheep, lost coin, black boy lost. 24, when in ICU, supervisor has enough sense to ask for my lesson plan. Not die, I respond. Few months, still recovering, performance review chew out, call to disappointment, lost appetite, left job, finished school and friendships. Never knew Ferguson could curdle ice cream. Teach kids. So many more kids. Want the best for them. Proud of their success. Praying for their recoveries. But above all feelings, oh God, I'd give anything to prove those people wrong.
Wow, Chris. I feel like we just need to sit. I mean, really, the last three pieces have all been, as one of my editors would say, hefty. They've had heft. And this piece had heft. It says a lot. That's one of the reasons why I really love our Saturday mornings is that everybody kind of they bring their whole soul. And Chris, you are one of those people who every single time you do. I wonder, where do you see this landing? Where do you see this piece? Where would you like to see this piece? Is it part of a memoir, part of a book that you're writing, or is it something that you're writing, hoping to be published in a magazine or as a short story or something?
Yeah, so currently I recorded it as an album of poetry,
Oh.
but my wife was like, you know what, this feels like the beginning of your memoir. So I'm thinking that whenever I write a book about my teaching experience or like my educational philosophy, I'd like to start it with this.
That's good. That's really good. But I also love it recorded because it really is kind of a spoken word piece. That's great. Well, and you're going to have an audiobook of your book, okay? Your
Oh, for
memoir.
sure.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, Anna, who's next?
Next up, we have Barbara Noe Kennedy. She is a freelance travel writer based in Arlington, Virginia, focusing on destinations, culture, art, history, and social justice. Her latest book is 100 Things to Do in Arlington Before You Die. Learn more at her website, which is barbaranoekennedy.com. She will be reading an essay tonight for us called More Than Stone and Glass. And over to you, Barbara.
Thank you. My friend Denise texted me from Paris. Notre Dame is burning. Confused, I turn on my TV and the sight stole my breath. Flames engulfed the ancient Gothic masterpiece like a ravenous predator, and the iconic spire swayed precariously, moments away from collapse. How could this be? I texted my French parents in disbelief. Muguet replied almost instantly, a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe. I watched the famous ancient cathedral face what seemed to be her final moments, and conflicting thoughts raced through my mind. Today's French are famously non-church-going. According to a 2023 survey, only 12% attended Mass. My French parents don't. And yet, like millions of others, they were transfixed and heartbroken at the devastating loss of a church. Notre Dame de Paris was built between 1163 and 1345, the world's second great Gothic cathedral after Saint Denis. Mind you, this was a marvel of human achievement, a bold architectural feat about as close to heaven as a mortal could get. Flying buttresses, pointed arches, and barrel vaults supported its soaring walls and immense stained glass windows, defining the Gothic aesthetic and making its grandeur possible. Scores of master stonemasons, carpenters, and glass blowers transformed raw materials into an awe-inspiring structure, taking immense pride in their work. And yet, Notre Dame was not built purely as a symbol of faith, not for the common people at least. Her towering heights and intricate facade served as a reminder of the church's authority in the lives of medieval Parisians, many of whom barely scraped by. The gargoyles, ostensibly to ward off demons, doubled as warnings to stay within the church's often oppressive embrace. The stained glass windows, celebrated for their artistic achievement, reinforced biblical narratives for an illiterate population, underscoring the church's control over salvation and eternal judgment. Through the centuries, she served as a symbol of subjugation and imperialism, capped by Napoleon's self-coronation in 1804 as emperor beneath her lofty vaults, a defining moment of imperial power staged in her sacred space. So why then were the non-religious Parisians, alongside millions of others, so devastated by the 2019 fire? Why mourn a structure rooted in centuries of imperialism and oppression? Because I believe there's more to Notre Dame than her historical associations with power and control. I have sensed this when I've visited, a deeper transcendent essence beneath her Gothic arches. Turns out she was built on the site of a foundation steeped in ancient spirituality, a site revered long before empire and Christianity arrived. The Celtic Parisi once worshipped here, drawn to the energy of this river-embraced sanctuary, honoring their animal deities. Later, the Romans, at the height of their power, sensed that same mystical essence and erected a temple on the same spot. Isn't that part of her allure, her almost tangible sense of the divine? And then there's her remarkable story of persistence. Through the centuries, Notre Dame has borne silent witness to the rise and fall of empires, the turmoil of revolutions, and the devastation of wars. Ravaged during the French Revolution, her religious statues were beheaded, and her gold and silver crosses and chalices melted into coins or weapons. By the 19th century, she had slipped into ruin, her once magnificent stained glass windows shattered or replaced with plain glass, and vegetation creeping through her crumbling walls. It was Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame that rekindled public interest, ensuring her brilliant restoration. But her trials were far from finished. She endured the siege of Paris in 1871, when her bells fell silent once again and treasures removed. The Nazi occupation during World War II, when her rose windows were whisked away for safeguarding, and the catastrophic fire of 2019. The thing is, she has survived every single one of these miseries. In the 5 years since Notre Dame's fire, she's been rebuilt using the same ancient techniques that brought her to life, and she shines bright white and anew, looking just as she must have when she first opened her doors nearly a millennium ago. This achievement is a testament to the extraordinary craftsmanship of workers dedicated to preserving her historical authenticity, and of the massive fundraising effort, but most importantly, is connected to the collective desire that she remain standing. Jesus said, "Render unto Jesus the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." That is, do what you must on this earth to survive, but remember that your ultimate loyalty remains with God. This is the paradox of Notre Dame, a worldly structure of obligations and powers and all the other messy human stuff, imbued with a divine presence. And that has to be the answer. Notre Dame endures because she's more than stone and glass, more than a church or a relic of empire. Her spaces inspire a connection to something greater than ourselves, whether that's viewed as her ethereal architecture, the continuity of history through the ages, or the presence of a higher power. She provides a glimpse beyond the mortal realm, reminding us of our capacity of both destruction and renewal, and of the sacred that persists, even in the shadow of oppression.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Barbara. Can I ask you a question about how you came to write particularly about Notre Dame, and also how was your writing process? Because I know that you brought this piece to us a few times over, I think, several months, and we saw it transform over time. So can you share a little bit about of your process with folks?
Well, when I first heard about the topic being resilience, I thought about Notre Dame, just how much the cathedral has survived. And it was about the time that it was reopening after the fire, and just how much the cathedral has survived through 850 plus years. I mean,
Amazing.
in terms of resilience, to me, that's just like, wow, you're just like hanging on. And in the first piece that I wrote, I mean, it flowed out, but I think I touched on the oppression notion. But when I brought it to the group, I mean, you all just helped me just round it out, expand. I mean, honestly, this is I felt like there was something there, but I didn't quite have it. And
Mm-hmm.
I was trying, and I don't know, maybe I'm still exploring it, but with the feedback that I had, I think I brought it back two or three times. It was just so helpful to help me sort of delve deeper into myself. Um, yeah, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, I mean, let me just tell you, and I said this the last time that you read it, that this piece, like you go all the way in, like you go all, like there's no stone unturned. And so we all feel like we know Notre Dame in a way that we did not know before we got on this call tonight. So thank you so much for the deep, powerful work that you do in your writing, and also for the honor of letting us be a part of your process.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anna, who's next?
Next up, we have the Reverend Dr. Jill Richardson. Jill pastors a church in suburban Chicago. She writes and speaks on church leadership, women's empowerment, and pastoral care. Her writing can be found in 8 books. Jill has 3 grown daughters. She enjoys traveling, gardening, volunteering with World Relief, breaking out in random musical numbers, trouncing the competition at Lord of the Rings trivia, and a good cup of Earl Grey. Tonight, she will be reading A Journey Toward Welcome. Jill?
Thank you. I pulled into the steep concrete driveway and noticed a sign on the chain link fence. No trespassing. Beware of dog. Unwilling to lose a limb that day to a wayward canine, I called the phone number on my spreadsheet. Identifying myself as a World Relief volunteer, I heard the person who answered hesitate, then reply, "No hablo inglés." Bien, tengo los... Shoot. What was the Spanish word for diapers? My fingers trembled as I quickly turned on speakerphone while flipping to iTranslate. On cue, my social anxiety kicked in. Pañales, the phone informed me. Tengo los pañales para los niños y estoy aquí. A thin black woman exited the house and ran down flimsy steps. Gracias, she cried, taking the bag of size 5 diapers and hugging me in one grand gesture. I felt the contrast of her wide, grateful embrace to my stiff arms, an awkwardly early exit. Once a month, I delivered diapers to refugee families. Other days, I might drive a Congolese mother and daughter to the teens' cancer treatment, take 2 Afghan women to a food bank, or bring an entire Colombian family to a church rummage sale. Always I hear their stories. Bombs, running feet, those left behind. I photographed one woman's hands in a doctor's office. I never photograph faces. My son is still in the refugee camp. It has been 4 years. Her fingers, like knobby tree limbs, twist a colorful kerchief as she speaks to the phone translator. They say I have depression because I don't see him, and I think this is true. In 2022, our planet set a record for the highest number of displaced people, 100 million. The question that puzzles me, the one that I can't shake every time I speak with one of my fellow white evangelicals, is how our shared faith became one that stood for xenophobia, fear of the stranger, rather than philoxenia, love of the stranger, the word for hospitality in our scriptures. When and how did we move from a people who spearheaded movements to settle Vietnamese refugees 50 years ago to a people who publicly applaud calling immigrants animals and cheerfully wave signs that scream mass deportations? How, in such a blip of time, did we come to the place where we are the only group in our country with a majority who believes immigrants threaten American society, a society created by immigrants? Growing up in a far northern part of Chicagoland, I almost never saw a non-white person. Immigrants were people in our history books. The darkest skinned person I knew was the musical theater Italian kid with the unibrow that I had a 2-year crush on. I wasn't taught to hate people of color. I simply wasn't taught they existed in any meaningful way in relationship to me. By omission, I suspect I was taught they didn't belong within my view. Studies show conservatives respond more aggressively to threats and are more sensitive to faces they consider threatening. When a person, say me, learns about life in an environment devoid of faces that look different than my own, strange faces might look more threatening, especially if I've been encouraged to believe this is so. According to brain science, when we continue to feast on the same stimulus, we continue to ramp up fear. This learned fear, in turn, changes our brains, making it more difficult to change our behavior and our beliefs. I left for college a confirmed conservative. I wrote my scholarship essay on why the U.S. should not ratify the SALT Treaty, leaning heavily into the evangelical Christianity that began to form in those years, reinforced those tight beliefs. How did I change those beliefs? Time, and 2 words, proximity and humility. I met people not like me. I learned from them. Most importantly, I risked my security in order to sit with their souls. This is what a pastor is supposed to do, after all. I was not taught to do it by my conservative seminary education. I was taught to, conserve. Conserving means to protect the status quo. Necessarily, that will lead a person to fear anything or anyone they see as a threat to the current power balance. Empowering people who are without hope can upset that balance. How did our shared faith become one that stood for fear of rather than love for the stranger? Maybe that question isn't as important to me after all as the question, how do we find our way back? The answer is perhaps enmeshed within my own experience. Change your experience, change your fears. Sharing my house with a drug addict or my car with a refugee gave me the lessons of proximity. Listening to their experiences, as well as reading about many others, taught me the harder lessons of humility. My friends, let's remember the teaching of hospitality. In the biblical sense of that word, no one is host or guest. We are all strangers in a strange land. We are all exiled from our perfect home of origin. Exercising the virtue of humility, then, should come naturally, as we know a kindred emotion of longing for wholeness. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Wow, that was powerful. Where do you see this landing? Is this a part of your book, or is this? I could actually see it in Christianity Today for sure, or Christian Century, or any major publication that is reaching out to Christians right now, especially white Christians. Folk need to hear this. So, where are you thinking that you'd like to see it land?
That's what I'd really like is for people, who are like I used to be to read this and get the connection. It is, it could be just this short essay. It's really a part of like a much longer research piece. So I like your ideas.
Research piece.
That'd be great.
Are you writing a book that's a research book?
No, it's just there's a lot more in it about brain chemistry and the differences and how those things can change and a lot more of my history too. That was just a bit of it.
Well, I think it should be a memoir. just my little thing. I mean, it really does. It reads amazingly well, and I think a lot of people would really resonate with it. So, okay, I don't know. It looks like you might have frozen, but thank you, Jill. Thank you. Anna, who's next? Oh, Anna. Anna's next. Anna is next. So, Anna Elizabeth Howard is an author, movement chaplain, hiking guide, and graduate of Fuller Theological Seminary. She is passionate about mutual thriving and healing, and our place in the natural world. So, anybody who's ever listened to anything that Anna does, she's always going to be on a hike or reflecting something about the natural world. Her most recent book is Inward Apocalypse: Uncovering a Faith for the Common Good. She will be reading her post-election reflection called My Feet Are on the Ground. Anna.
I heard him before I saw him. Heavy, squishing footsteps painted a picture in my head before he passed me. A large man was walking up behind me on the Greenway Trail. A woman on the other side peered out from her hood at him. "Good morning," he said breathlessly to her. She raised a hand but was looking at me. "Good morning," he huffed out as he passed my meandering steps. I didn't reply to him, just like I hadn't replied to the other dozen or so people going the other way that morning. I'd finally emerged from my house and was trying to desperately to return to my body. I have a magnificent resting bitch face, I'm told, and I was literally looking away from people as they passed, and they still intruded with their good mornings. He got a couple 100 feet ahead of me, and I guess he reached his step goal or whatever, because he suddenly turned around like a warplane coming back for another strafing run. "Have a great day," he exhaled heavily as he squished back the other way on his big puffy shoes. "Fuck off," I murmured under my breath, not wanting an actual confrontation, but needing to relieve some feelings. The Greenway is in a small Tennessee town perched on the border of two counties, both of which went for Trump by 42 points and 50 points respectively, in a state where 2/3 of the populace also voted red. When I walk this Greenway, for every 20 or so white people I see 3 to 4 people of color. On Friday after the election, I saw no people of color. I knew for a fact that given where I was, 3 out of every 4 white people I saw had certainly voted for Trump. So the good mornings that morning felt like barbs in my tender skin. My feet are on the ground. My feet are on the ground. I repeated this over and over, trying to get out of my head and back into my body. 8 years ago, I stayed up late watching the results, staring as too many states lit up red over and over again until there was no hope left. I stayed up till 4 a.m. crying and then woke up at 7 mad and determined to start doing things. It all felt like an emergency. I ignored my body and turned into an emotional first responder, trying to do all the things wherever I could. My hypothyroidism flared from the stress, and I gained about 60 pounds or so, frequently couch-bound, to full-body myalgia, episodes that would happen after pushing, especially to help organize events, participate in protests, help run a conference for our local women's march community, and once staying up all night, identifying and helping bail out participants in a vigil in a town south of me that had been set upon by mounted police officers. The police officers allowed their horses to step on at least one person as they rounded them up, as the participants left the park where the vigil had been held. And then my body would crash. I would crawl back up to barely functioning and jump back in again. When I woke up to the news that Wednesday morning, I thought, I can't live like that again. I don't want to do this again. And as much as I don't want to live this chapter, I've learned a lot. We can't get through this alone. We can't get through this if we don't stay embodied. We must start with ourselves, putting our health first, our communities first, and thinking on local scales. Rebecca Solnit posted the other day that just because we can't save everything doesn't mean we can't save anything. And what we save is worth saving. When I shared her post, I added the thought that if we all save what we can, just whatever is in our reach, we will save more than we think. I've written and spoken for at least the past 8 years now on the power of small things. When I'm hiking, setting out to conquer many miles in one day starts with a single step at the trailhead and then a commitment to put one foot in front of the other. I passed a squirrel sleeping on a branch not far from the Greenway. He'd pulled his tail over his body like a blanket, and he was getting his rest despite the joggers and the bikers and the walkers passing by. Prioritizing our health and rest is resistance, because we need to be around and healthy for the duration. Prioritizing community is resistance, because authoritarian regimes count on us feeling isolated and helpless, and as such, despairing. Prioritizing hope as a lifestyle is resistance, and we just need to get used to resistance in any and all forms. I just received a notification that the Plan B I ordered is out for delivery, along with my shelf-stable hummus that I take hiking. Sometimes resistance is served with a side of hummus. Who knew? My feet are on the ground. I reached up and brushed the golden leaves of a maple tree that grew over the path, and one came off in my hand. It was soft and pliant as the chlorophyll had faded from its structures. I lifted it to my nose and inhaled the most wonderfully sweet, earthy aroma. I carried it in one hand, tracing the main veins with my thumb. My feet are on the ground. There's a leaf in my hand. I inhaled slowly through my nose, letting the cool damp of the morning air fill my lungs. My feet are on the ground. There's a leaf in my hand. There's fresh air in my lungs. I walked into the part of the forest that's still grieving the loss of the acres of trees clear cut for a housing development. I brushed my hand against the bark of trees as I passed them in greeting, not caring what I looked like to any passerby. I felt their grief and their resilience in one. The pink chalk messages warning about judgment and railing against queer people were gone, washed away by the rain that had come the day after Election Day. My own personal miniature cleansing of Isengard, the water washing away the filth and the hatred. I visited with the two grandmother oaks left standing between townhouses in the path. They twinkled at me as they let their leaves loose again and reminded me that as long as you have that buddy with you, you keep standing. I know that every time I've reached out to and talked with someone else, I've felt better. Small points of connection that lift my heart and make things bearable again. Freedom has always had to be fought for and always will be because freedom is hard. Living free takes a lot of work. It's all too easy to acquiesce to the strong man, to give up the fight. The strong man wins when people give up in advance, and that is what we cannot do. We have to get used to resisting. We have to get used to the small steps, and small gains, and small, tight-knit communities we can count on. And then, like ripples in a pond, when you scatter a handful of tiny stones across the surface, all our small things can come together. Our tiny streams can coalesce into a mighty river. And then justice can roll down. Justice will roll down, even if it's not this generation that sees it on a large scale. One of my favorite hikes is a long loop through the forest. I recommended it to someone and they said, I'd heard there's nothing to see here. I'm always taken aback by the idea that because there's no big overlook or no waterfall, that somehow there's nothing to see. There's mushrooms growing on dead wood with rings of magnificent colors. There's trees older than your great-grandparents with stories to whisper in your ear. There's 3 seasons worth of tiny flowers to discover in the understory. But maybe to appreciate the forest, you have to see the trees, like really see them. It doesn't mean we forget about the big picture, but it also means the big picture is made up of a lot of little things. And if we neglect the small, we can't understand the large anyway. Pick up a leaf and admire the complexity of its vein structure. This little thing we take for granted looks like a whole city map if we look closely enough. This leaf that was part of the hundreds I stepped on as I walked did its part all summer to feed the tree. Trees eat light via their trees, so all summer storing energy, and then they rest, letting go of their leaves, which are arguably absolutely essential. But if they kept them all year round, they'd die. The trees have a story to whisper to us if we are willing to stop and listen. Look at the people you admire from history, the people who struggle actively for a world they didn't get to enjoy. There's been progress made, and that's what some people are fighting to repeal because they can't stand to live in a world where all people are truly equal. And while we are a long, long way from that, we must be willing to be, as Cardinal Dearden said 45 years ago, prophets of a future, not our own. My feet are on the ground.
Amen. I have no words. I just think it needs to sit. Where can we read that?
Oh, this piece is on my Substack, aehowardwrites.substack.com. I wrote it with my Substack audience in mind, knowing they were going to need some thoughts after the election. Where do we go from here? How do we do this again? And also just from where I was in that moment.
You're writing a new book, is that right? A memoir?
I'm trying, yes.
All of us are doing memoirs on some level or not.
This was not a memoir.
Okay. But I just want you to know that what you wrote is like perfect. I don't really like to use that word, but I mean, it has all of the elements. Let's just put it that way. And you have dug deep. And as a result, it is an offering. Like it's received as an offering. So everybody run to her Substack and read that and share it. Please share it. Thanks so much, Anna.
Thank you. Okay, actually, was about to remove my pen and I need to keep yours because you are up next. Next, we have our very own Lisa Sharon Harper. You know her as the president and founder of Freedom Road. Lisa is a writer, podcaster, and public theologian. She's the author of the critically acclaimed book, Fortune, How Race Broke My Family and the World and How to Repair It All. And tonight, she'll be reading us a piece called I Am, I Am.
Fabulous. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen with you because I want to share with you a devotional that I wrote. And it's a devotional for Bible.com's. They did this special project where they put together, or they asked me and another person to put together 5 devotionals that were dedicated and inspired by songs on the Return to Love album that was put out just around the time of the election, just before the election. And it was a call for the church to return to our purpose, to love, right? So I wrote the first 3 pieces, and somebody else, fabulous, Angel Munez, wrote the last 2 pieces. And I want to share with you one of them, which I actually wrote in part in the writing room. It's called I Am, I Am. And I share this because my next writing project, my next book, is actually going to be a 365-day devotional. I decided to do it. After writing this, I realized I like this process and I'm going to keep doing it. So, I am, I am. First, I want to share the song with you because it'll make more sense if you listen to the song, and then I'll read the piece to you.
When the borders of the shore were drawn, tell me, where were you? And when the stars were hung upon the sky, tell me, where were you? Building castles with your thoughts, you keep searching for what's lost. From the earth, tell me, where were you? And in the darkness of your mother's womb, who was forming you? Telling stories with your scars, but remember whose you are.
The scripture that this reflects on, that actually that the song was inspired by, is Exodus 3:1 through 15. And I used the New Revised Standard Version when I was doing my study. And it's a long passage, but this is the passage where Moses encounters God in a burning bush. And so I'm just going to read the part that actually was at the heart of this reflection. But Moses said to God, "If I come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?" And God said to Moses, "I am who I am." He said further, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" And so that's the heart of the scripture, and there's a whole story around it. Here's my reflection. When life overwhelms, when wars and rumors of wars flash across our phones, when rivers and seas rise to consume, when winds rip through our sense of safety, when the divine dignity imbued in every human soul is threatened by oppression or poverty, then, in those moments, breathe in, breathe out, and remember who God is and who God is not. One of the greatest temptations in life is to look at the monsters in our lives and think they are greater than God. We are doomed in their wake. Whether it is an abusive leader or an oppressing government, they both tell a lie. They say to us, "I rule your life. I shape your destiny. You must live according to the rules I set for you." But the lesson of the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the abolitionist movement, and the lesson of Moses in this: we, all of us, are created in the image of God. As such, we are created with the divine call and the capacity to exercise agency, to make choices that impact our world. That comes from Genesis 1:26. And even under the thumb of oppression, we can look oppression in the face and say one grand no. John Lewis said no when he was beaten on Edmund Pettus Bridge, calling on the government of Selma to protect the voting rights of Black citizens. Elisabeth Cady Stanton said no when she wrote the Women's Bible, for the first time in history interpreting the Bible through a woman's eyes. Octavius V. Catto said no when he canvassed in Philadelphia, directly following the passage of the 15th Amendment, registering newly free African Americans to vote. Disabled activists said no for 2 centuries until the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law in 1990, requiring equal protection under the law for people with disabilities. You see, in this Exodus passage, God tells Moses to rise and say no to his people's subjugation. He is tempted, as we all are, to believe he is not enough. The oppressive powers of Egypt were God. Pharaoh was God. The Egyptian army was God. "Who am I?" Moses said. And God said, "You are in the lineage of the people who followed God. Let me remind who I am. Remind you who I am. This is who I am. I am. God is the creator of all. God was before Pharaoh. God created Pharaoh. Like God created the sea and the rivers and every person who leads governments and armies. God is creator, not us. And to Pharaoh and every abuser and every oppressor, the good news is this: there is grace, the grace of breath, the grace of dependence on one greater than oneself. You are not God. You can exhale and be simply human, vulnerable, flesh. Creator God will be your protector too. And therefore, we all can cry no to that which crushes the image of God everywhere, anywhere, and we all can utter the divine yes to the God of grace who creates so that we all might flourish. Breathe in and remember, I am, I am. And then the breath prayer for this particular devotional entry is breathe in, God is God. Breathe out, I am not. Amen. So I wrote that for a commissioned piece, but it also inspired me. I mean, I did three pieces. I haven't done so many devotionals in one set all at any time before, and I realized I really like this process partly because I love Bible study. I love it. And so it got me into the Bible. So now my next project is going to be a 365-day devotional. And I hope that you guys will all have a heads up when it comes out, probably in a year or two. So God bless you. Anna?
Well, that is all of our writers for this evening, talking to you all about the subject of resilience. I hope you have enjoyed being with us tonight. I'd like to invite you all to share any last thoughts you have on in our chats. Just for a moment, anything that jumped out at you? Any last thing? I know you've been sharing things all along. So Karen says that everyone just drew her in. Thank you, Karen, for being here. Also, we want you back in the writers group. I'm just going to throw that one out there and, just tell you need to come back. And yeah, I'd like to invite all of our writers now to replace their contact info in the chat. So their main website or their Substack, so y'all can find it. And yes, it is possible to join this group. I will grab you a link right this second. We would love to have you come with us on Saturday mornings.
So while Anna is doing that, I'll also just invite you, if you are a writer or if you want to be a writer, several of the people who you listened to tonight did not come into our group thinking I'm a writer. They came in thinking I'm curious, I want to try to write. And obviously you can see that something beautiful has come. And we kind of sharpen each other. It's part of the work. When we come together on Saturday mornings, we sharpen each other. So to give you a sense of our process, we come together at 9 a.m. or 6 a.m. Eastern, Western time, Pacific time, 9 a.m. Eastern time, and everything in between. You get it. And we write for 3 hours in each other's presence on Zoom with our screens off and our microphones muted. Then we come back together 3 hours later and share 3 to 5 minutes of our work with each other, getting feedback each time. We are only allowed to read things that have been written in the writer's room or edited. You can also do editing in the writer's room. We always attribute, quotes correctly to the right people. And we also really do the work to try to help promote each other's work when it's coming out. So this writers group has 8 books that have come out of the writers group, and many, many articles that were written in this room, in the writers room. And you got to listen to a few tonight, and we really hope that you enjoyed your time. And we also hope that you'll join us in the writers room. I believe that Anna has placed, yes, she's placed the link in the chat. So if you want to join us, please come and join the group. And you don't have to come every Saturday. What the membership fee does is it gives you access to the writer's room, the writing room, whenever you want to join us. So some people come every single week, others join us when they can, others join us once a month or whatever, but it's a really small fee just for that reason, and that small fee gives you access each month. So yeah, we hope that you'll join us. We hope and it's not just a writers group, it's really become a beautiful community of support and care. And so, okay, well, thank you guys so much. Anna, did you have any last words here before we go?
No, I think I'm good. Over to you, Lisa.
All right. All right. Well, everybody, let's do what we normally do. We're going to do our process. We didn't do this on the front end. We normally do our what's your one word check-in. So I'm going to ask you, what is your one word check out? How are you leaving the time as a result of having been with us for the last hour and 15 minutes or so? How are you exiting the time? What's your word? I will start. My word is energized. And maybe actually even full. So I'm gonna cheat and give two words. Why don't you go ahead and write your word in the chat? Let us know what's your word. Chelsea says her word is grounded. That's fabulous. Karen Chapin says overflowing. Anna says enriched. Jennifer says inspired. April says connected. Oh, that's so fabulous. This is so great. Chris, peaceful. Rose, encouraged. Fabulous. Are there other words, y'all? Are there other words that characterize how you are leaving this space? Jill Richardson, educated, also cold, because the office isn't heated at night. Oh, I feel you. I feel you. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we really hope that we see you in the writing room next Saturday. And Barbara also wrote grateful. I always say that, but it's true. Deborah inspired. All right, y'all. God bless you. We'll see you in the writing room.